Hello everyone, welcome to my first Sea of Thieves tutorial. This video aims to inform people new to solo Hourglass on what to do and expect in certain scenarios, as well as the general basics of being a solo. If you feel like you already understand a certain topic, you can use the timestamps to move to a different section of the tutorial. If you find this video helpful, I would appreciate a like and a sub, as it helps to grow my channel, and if I missed anything important, let me know in the comments and I'll put it in the description. Alright, so before you can even think of diving for Hourglass, you need to make sure you're properly prepared. When you load into a session, the first thing you should do is go around the outpost and fill your pockets with as many valuables as possible. The only food item you should pick up from the barrels is pineapples. Next, you should go over to the shipwright and purchase some captain's food supplies. If you didn't find at least one pineapple from the outpost, you should also go over to the merchant and buy a food crate. Take the singular pineapple from the crate and go over to your ship. Here you should fill up on any items you didn't get from the island, and take the 4 pineapples you bought from the bottom food barrel. Once you're done, your inventory should look exactly like this, unless you found any bone collars or cursed cannonballs on your outpost. After that, vote to scuttle your ship to a new sea. This will put you at a fresh outpost with full pockets of extra supplies. Once you load in, go around the outpost and make sure it has plenty of chain shots. These are essential for Hourglass, as they allow you to deal extreme damage to the mast and wheel on an enemy ship. I usually try to find 6 or 7 chains at minimum at an outpost, and if yours has insufficient chains, simply scuttle again until you find an outpost that suits your needs. Once you've settled on an outpost, it's time to stock up your ship. Buy all the crates from the merchant excluding the bait crate, and buy every captain supply excluding worms. After that, take your storage crate and begin to loot all the barrels at your outpost. Be careful to siphon out all the useless junk you collect after every few barrels, as they fill up your storage crate fast and prevent you from picking up the good materials you actually want. The things you want to get rid of are fireworks, flares, and worms. If you get any cursed cannonballs, simply add them to your inventory to conserve space. Once your outpost is fully looted, bring your storage crate to your ship, along with the other merchant crates you purchased. Start cooking your meat and begin storing the supplies. Use your storage crate to sort your supplies into the respective barrels on your ship. For the cannonball barrels, I would recommend putting all your supplies in one barrel for easy access. For the food barrels, I personally store all my food in the top barrel and my uncooked meat in the bottom barrel. For your merchant crates, you can either choose to store their contents or strategically place them around the boat so you can use them to resupply. Any spare crates you should put on the railing of your boat by the cannon to prevent enemy pirates from harpooning you off your boat during a battle. This is called a turkey sandwich. Once your ship is fully supplied, raise your emissary flag and dive for your chosen faction. While you're waiting to be matched with an opponent, you can take the time to cook some more meat and angle your sails to the right. Since the update on how sails work, this helps you maintain an easier spiral on your enemy. Once you emerge from the water, the first thing you want to do is turn your wheel to enter into an orbital with your enemy. Once your wheel is turned, raise your sails to somewhere between half and full raised. Where you stop in this range will dictate the speed at which you spiral, which is entirely up to your preference. After that, turn your wheel back around so you're now circling in towards the center of the arena. The amount you turn inward varies based on how fast you and your opponent are moving. This skill does take experience and much trial and error, but is important for a good start to your fight. Your goal leaving helm is to have your ship set up so that you won't have to return to helm to correct your angle for a little while. Once your angle is set up, go down to your cannon and begin to fire. As you shoot, you need to pay attention to 4 important things. Number 1, your cannon trajectory. While firing at the enemy, you need to pay attention to where your cannonballs are landing. If you see them going just over or falling just short of the enemy boat, adjust accordingly. Likewise, if you see your cannonballs landing too far forward or behind the enemy ship, adjust your lead so they'll hit. Once you start to hit, make sure to try and spread your damage along the boat as much as you can to create as many holes as possible. The more holes you make, the more your opponent will have to get off cannon to bucket their ship, leaving you with less retaliatory fire. Number 2, your enemy's cannon trajectory. While firing, you should be aware of your opponent's cannonballs for 2 reasons. If you're missing, you can look at their cannonballs and adjust your shots to match theirs. Secondly, you need to be aware of inbound cannonballs that could hit you. Getting one-balled when you have a decent amount of pressure is almost a guaranteed game ender. Number 3, your angle. While shooting at the enemy ship, you will almost always notice it start to drift further and further towards the border of your cannon angle. If you notice this, you should quickly run up to helm and either soften or tighten your turn to keep the enemy boat and your cannon angle. Unless your initial turn is really messed up, try to only adjust a peg or two, since overcompensation will only lead to you spending even more time away from cannon. One of the worst things you can do in a fight is to lose angle on your opponent, because they'll be able to pound your boat without fear of retaliation. Number 4. The state of your boat. This is going to be a long one. During your initial spiral, you want to pay attention to how much your enemy is hitting your boat and where. If your enemy is only hitting your back holes, for instance, your water level won't be going up too high. In that situation, you just want to grab a bucket and or repair a hole every so often, like if you get splashed off cannon and have to eat. However, if your opponent is mainly hitting the front of your boat, you'll need to keep a much firmer handle on your pressure. To make things simpler, here's a picture where I labeled each of the holes on a sloop by how often they're opened. Now, here's the same picture where I instead labeled the holes you want to prioritize during a fight. Right side holes are to get repaired ASAP, as it's much harder for your opponent to reopen them. Front hole and the frontmost left 2 holes don't get hit as much, as cannoneers typically aim for cannon to try and prevent you from hitting them as much. Same thing applies for back holes. They don't take in as much water, so they're a lower priority for enemy cannoneers. The second frontmost left hole and the hole by map table tend to get opened when opponents aim for cannon line, so they have a slightly lower priority than the ones next to them. While helpful for beginners, these pictures aren't perfect. Each fight is different, and you might have an enemy that spreads differently. In those kinds of situations, you need to observe their patterns and aim to repair holes they tend to open less often. Overall, your goal is to keep enough pressure off yourself so that you can continue consistently cannoning your opponent. Now to zoom back out. While your hull's condition is your main priority, there are other parts of your ship that also need to stay in good condition. After your hull, the wheel takes next priority. The wheel is what allows you to keep angle with your opponent, and if you start to overturn or underturn, you don't want to have to helm slower than a rare employee when they're asked to work on something besides the Pirate Emporium. I like to have at minimum 2 repairs on wheel, preferably 3. Next priority is your mast, although it's rather subjective. During your initial spiral, maybe you could go for a few repairs on mast if everything else is doing fine, but I usually don't bother, unless my opponent is under a lot of pressure and isn't cannoning as much. In the likely case that you're demasted, you can either choose to let your mast fall completely and not spend time catching it, or you can take a little time to catch it and leave yourself the option to move in the future, if a good opportunity presents itself. However, if your opponent keeps hitting your mast, it's better to just let it down, instead of wasting a bunch of time catching it. At some point after a few minutes of slamming each other with cannonballs, either one or both of you will demast the other. If you knock your opponent's mast down first, that doesn't necessarily mean you're instantly in a winning position. If your opponent knocks your mast soon after, then you and him will be in a stalemate. What you want to do in this situation is try to prevent them from getting the opportunity to chain you. You can achieve this by hitting their wheel and raising sails so they spin out of angle, going faster to try and get away from their cannon line, or by splashing cannon until your opponent is forced to retreat down to bucket. No matter how you go about accomplishing this, then you'll be in a winning position. From there, you need to make sure that you don't let your opponent recover. Continue to spread damage on as many holes as you have access to, and pay attention if you get any white markers. These will tell you what your opponent's doing. If you get a white marker towards the front of the boat, that means they're probably repairing a hole in that area. You should capitalize on this knowledge by focusing your shots towards there to try and knock them off the hole. From there, you should repair any holes you might have left, while making sure to keep occasionally cannoning your opponent, so they can't recover. Then, go out to board their boat and finish them off with a good 2-tap. Now to explore the contrary position. If your mast is knocked before your opponent's and you're unable to knock theirs soon after, try not to panic, cause if you can get enough good shots at your opponent's cannon line, you could force them to retreat down to bucket, which will then give you a good window to knock their mast down and enter an equal position. If you're unable to keep angle due to a destroyed wheel or the opponent focusing their cannon splash on you, you'll need to play very carefully. Make sure to keep up on repairs while draining your water, especially if your opponent's spiraling faster than you can turn. Your goal is to prevent your opponent from spreading as much as possible when you try to recover. You can accomplish this through occasional cannon shots and well-placed snipes. During this, it's crucial that you keep yourself safe from one-balls and snipes. That means staying below deck unless you're confident of survival, and always keeping your health above 70. If you and your opponent are demasted at similar times, or one chains the other at a later stage of the fight, it tends to turn into a stalemate. In this situation, you need to make sure to balance repairs with cannoning, while being very careful not to get one-balled. The key to success is outspreading your enemy while making sure you don't build up too much pressure yourself. The most important thing in this situation is to try and keep the enemy off cannon through either well-placed snipes or overwhelming cannon splash to try and get ahead. If you can manage to force your opponent down to bucket and repair for a while, try to clear yourself of most if not all of your holes. Here you could try to go over to board or raise your mast in attempts to get moving. However, if you try this, you'll need to make sure your opponent doesn't get too caught up on repairs, as all the time you bought yourself will be a waste if they're just free to kill or chain you the second you make your move. Either way you choose to play, if you do it well, it should lead to your opponent's defeat. Now, despite this guide being my best attempt at educating you on how to win Hourglass, there's nothing that can replace experience. That said, the most important way to get good at Hourglass is by playing it. After each match, won or lost, you should reflect on what you did well and what you didn't do so great. From there, focus on improving the thing you did wrong, to try and prevent it from happening as often. Another great way to improve at Hourglass is actually something as simple as watching other people play it. I originally got into solo Hourglass by watching amazing players like Sponge, who literally posts videos of himself reviewing solo matches, so he can point out flaws and share good tips. I'd strongly suggest checking out his videos if you don't watch him already, as he's literally the best Hourglass player. I'll leave a link in the description to his channel. If you found this guide helpful, I'd appreciate a like and a sub, as it shows me you appreciate the time it took to make this video and encourages me to post more videos in the future. Alright, that's all from me. Peace.